If you've been on the internet at all recently, you've probably seen ads promising to teach you how to build your course just using AI. Seems pretty simple, right? So should you do it? The answer is yes, if you want a course that's destined to fail. And a resounding no if you want a course that actually creates results for you and your students. Because while AI is great at creating information, it's even a great brainstorming partner and can assist you in creating your course. AI can't do the one thing you need to have long-term success as a course creator. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to reveal what that is and why it's the only way to stand out and thrive in a market soon to be overrun with AI-generated courses. I'm Marisa Murgatroyd, and I'm still blown away that over the past 12 years, I've generated over $40 million in online course sales, helping over 12,000 students successfully launch their online courses and businesses. I've been featured on the Inc. 5000 list of America's fastest growing companies for 4 years running and inspired my students to take over 500,000 hours of action, leading to huge results for them and for me. So let's just say I've learned a lot about what to do and what not to do when creating an online course or program. And I'm about to share the biggest mistake hurting so many course creators or people who want to create an online course, and what you need to do instead, especially as AI becomes an ever-increasing part of our lives. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and then let's flash back to December 2022. When ChatGPT was first released. Less than a year later, AI-based tools and AI-generated content have taken the world by storm. It almost seems like AI is the cheat code or the quick and easy way to build a profitable course. And while the possibilities are exciting, from brainstorming to creating content to supercharging your productivity, there's a real danger that's threatening your business. A danger that can seriously keep you from the success you want. And it's even more dangerous if you actually care about getting results for your students. So, what is it? Information overwhelm, or what I like to call the thud factor. The thud factor is this idea that the more content you deliver, the bigger and louder the thud, and the bigger the perceived value for your students. And this myth, it's been perpetuated for a long freaking time, starting with the door-to-door salesman selling Encyclopedia Britannicas and world books, remember them? All the way to the information marketers like Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, Jay Abraham, dropping this thud of information on your doorstep to everybody online, overstuffing their courses with just an overwhelming amount of content, to the point where information has turned into noise, with similar messages screaming for attention across the internet. Even the top experts are struggling for attention. The cold, hard truth is that information was never the answer, because information alone, it doesn't work. It doesn't solve the problems of the world. And if it did, we'd all be living in Googletopia or ChatGPtopia. Just think about it. We'd be rich, we'd be happy, we'd be healthy, every single one of us, because we'd have all the information we could ever possibly want and need at our fingertips 24/7 on Google. But instead, all that access and all that information feels more like the Google apocalypse to the vast majority of people who are overwhelmed and even paralyzed by all of it. Because information, it doesn't lead to action. And you can't improve your life without taking action, am I right? So when people buy a course and they don't complete it, they leave feeling like a failure. But it's not their fault. They were sold a promise that was impossible to achieve. And yet people continue to push more and more information as the answer. Hundreds of thousands of new information products and courses are released every single year by hopeful entrepreneurs. Yet most of these products will never get more than 100 paying customers, and definitely won't lead to long-lasting and fulfilling success. I discovered the danger of too much information the hard way. Back in 2012, I created Message to Money, one of my first courses featuring my Live Your Message system. And that made a huge difference when it came to selling this program because it gave my course structure. It was this inside-out model, and you had to work your way from the inside out, and each of the 7 parts of the system became a module inside my course. And each module was very robust, to say the least. It basically amounted to 6 courses in one, all crammed into a single 6-week program. I didn't know it at the time, but it was way too much. Back in 2012, everybody was making these Mongo multi-point programs that taught you everything you need to know, similar to those early info products delivered to your doorstep with a big thud. So I followed suit, since that's what I thought an online course was all about. I worked my butt off, spending months on the content, the sales page, the launch materials, the webinar, the emails, the membership site, all the stuff. I ended the year with 40 sales and just over $20,000 in revenue. It seemed like a small fortune at the time, and I was officially in business. Woohoo! I continued to sell that course for a full 4 years, upping the price to $697, then $997, ultimately selling 501 copies for a grand total of over $470,000. By the end, I was making a pretty decent income, or so I thought. Gradually, I started to see the cracks in the program until I made the hard choice to stop selling it. It all started with the refunds. 13.5% of my students refunded, which dropped that revenue down by a full $33,488. I was concerned. I thought something was wrong with my course, and I started to second guess myself. Out of desperation, I approached a colleague and asked, "Do you have lots of people buying your program and giving up before they finish?" She looked at me, she nodded, and she said, "Marisa, maybe some people just aren't meant to succeed." That felt like a punch in the gut, because I believe that every person is meant to succeed. That every single person, given the right education, given the right support, given the right guidance, can succeed. But that just wasn't what I was seeing. And when I dug deeper, I realized it wasn't just me. I discovered that the industry average refund rate for traditional online courses like the one I was creating at the time is between 10 to 20%. But nobody tells you that when you hear about all those big $1 million product launches. And this was just the beginning. I started to get this feeling in my gut that not a lot of students were making it all the way through the course. And when we actually ran the numbers from our membership site, we saw the harsh reality, something that most online course creators never get to see. That only around 5% of our students were actually completing the course, and even worse, the average completion rate for online courses industry-wide is just 3%. Just 3%. Yikes. That means if you're creating products, programs, or courses in the traditional way like I was, and like most people still are today, making it all about the information, up to 97% of the people who buy from you will either not even open your course, or open it, but fall off, fail to complete it, and fail to get the results you promised, which, even if you figure out how to sell your course, leads to declining sales and reputation over time. And now that anyone can create a traditional online course just using AI, a flood, and I mean a flood of new courses and information threatens to drown all of us. So, do you want to stand out in a sea of AI-generated courses and deliver real results for your students while ultimately increasing your success and income? Then you need to create an experiential course, what I call an experience product rather than an info product. An experience product is a better type of course where you use specific kinds of experiences to get your students into consistent action so they can achieve real results. Because consistent action is the real key to success, not innate talent or even motivation. And while AI is great at creating information, it's even a great brainstorming partner. It can't get your students into consistent action so they can experience an actual transformation. And in today's go society, where everyone is bombarded with information, people are desperate for a shortcut. They're eager to make a transformation in their lives as quickly, easily, and in the most enjoyable way possible. Whether that's learning how to market their small business online, to learning how to strum a simple tune on the guitar. What you're creating a course around doesn't have to be some massive life-changing transformation. It can be anything that solves a real problem or delivers a specific result in your students' lives. And the way to do that today is through experiential learning. I just returned from 2 months in Europe, And one of my favorite places that surprised me was Sarajevo. We explored, we took tours, we experienced the culture, we saw the sniper holes and the Olympic bobsled runs. And I remember when I was younger, I would hear all about Sarajevo on the news all the time. I'd read about it in the newspapers, the history books, but what I was hearing and what I was reading was pretty much instantly forgotten. I didn't really understand what happened there in the 90s until I was actually there, experiencing it firsthand. And that's the thing about information for most of us. It rarely sticks. But experiences, they live with us forever. And the best part about this is that you can use the power of experiences to create an online course that inspires, even compels your students to transform their lives in a positive way. Pretty awesome, right? And that's something that information alone and all those AI-generated courses simply can't do. So they finish your course and they get the results they were after by designing an experience that inspires them to actively participate in your course and have your course react and respond to their participation, even shape their participation. So no two people have the same experience. Now let's take a look at a real-world example. The Fitbit. This wearable piece of technology starts reacting and responding to your behavior right away, and it sends signals as to how you're doing and what to do next. So your day on a Fitbit is unlike anyone else's day. It's like you have your very own personal trainer right there with you. And in the case of experiential courses, learning also becomes customized to your students' needs. And you have a course that almost feels like it's pacing with your students, as if they've got a coach in their corner, rooting them on every step of the way. And no, you don't have to be there holding each person's hand. Now, I know this sounds complicated, even impossible, but it's actually quite simple. Over the last 12 years, I've helped thousands of people fulfill their dream of launching their own courses and businesses online, successfully creating experience products that are uniquely designed for where we're at right now and what people need right now to get into action. Because the last thing anybody needs is yet another traditional online course or information-based product. But the world does need the experience that only you can create through your experience product. And that's something you can't accomplish with AI alone. Because remember, while AI is great at brainstorming, it's missing the one critical thing you need to succeed as a course creator: actual human experience. Because people don't change their lives through information and logic alone. If we did, we'd all be living in Googletopia already. We'd have our perfect lives and our perfect relationships and our perfect businesses, but we don't. We change our lives when we're emotionally invested in doing new things, feeling different, being different. If this is resonating with you, and you're ready to dive into how you can use experiential learning to get and keep your students into action so they achieve the transformation they're after, keep watching. And if you want more What's Working Now tutorials and early invites to my free live workshops and events about this topic, get on my list. Head on over to liveyourmessage.com/subscribe or click the link in the description to join so you don't miss a thing. Now back to the question, how can you create an experience product? By starting with 4 of the most critical experiences you need: shared experiences, perceived customization, constant wins, and emotional experiences. So let's take a look at each of these experiences, including some real-world examples to get your gears turning. So first of all, we've got shared experiences. Because in today's fractured world, people crave community and connection. Am I right? Let's take Spotify as an example. Spotify saw the problem with iTunes and the iPad, the ability to have 1,000 songs in your pocket. Talk about content overwhelm, right? How do you choose one song when you've got 1,000 sitting there in your pocket at any time? So Spotify took advantage of this opportunity by not just providing official and user-generated playlists, but by creating real-time shared experiences where you could easily share what you're listening to with your friends at just the push of a button. Engaging with their app transformed from an individual experience to a community experience. And you can do the same in your experiential course by building an engaged community of support and feedback, or even bringing everyone together on group coaching calls, virtual events, or even in-person live events. Because as humans, we're social creatures. And just because your course is entirely online doesn't mean you can't incorporate an important social element. No one thrives in isolation, so don't isolate your students. As they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. Next up, we've got our second critical experience, perceived customization. The fact is that your course, no matter how great it is, won't be enough in a world full of people desperate for real human experiences. And physical brands like Nike, they get this. They understand that it's no longer just about the product. It's about participating and engaging with the product or the brand. That's why Nike opened pop-up neighborhood stores using local data analysis to decide exactly what happens inside each store, so they can actually tailor each store to that particular neighborhood and the people in it. Inside, they've got a sneaker bar to give customers fast, on-the-spot access to whatever they want, rather than having to browse the store and wait for the infamous shoe salesman to come out and help them. And of course, the experience of trying on shoes is completely different because people today don't just want to try on a pair of shoes. They want to beat them up and see how they perform in real-world situations. The experience of using a product and the results it provides you are now more important than the product itself. And that's even more powerful with perceived customization. Now let's move on to critical experience number 3, constant wins. No company thriving in the experience age would be complete without some win experiences. Inside the store, Nike has a fun digital vending machine, which they call an unlock box, where you can scan your reward card and get instant perks. Starbucks has also done this for years with their Starbucks Rewards program, where you get stars for each purchase. These big companies get that the shoes or the coffee are really no longer the main attraction. The main attraction is now getting their customers to interact and engage with their brand through win experiences and rewards. So how can you create win experiences inside your experiential course? By using what I call constant wins. With constant wins, you create a game your students feel like they can win. You start by building up their confidence and momentum and getting those positive emotions flowing through really small, easy wins that gradually escalate into big results. So instead of having video after video after video with no end in sight and saving up that win for the very end of your course, you can reward your students after each and every action, keeping them fully engaged and motivated to keep going until the end. Now, these little micro rewards trigger the release of the happy chemical in your brain, aka dopamine, which keeps you motivated and moving until you succeed, which in your case is students crossing the finish line in your course. And finally, we have emotional experiences. Now, early hotels and inns were mainly functional experiences, a place to put your feet up and get a good night's sleep, while the expensive hotels just had fancier beds and bathrooms. And the really fancy hotels added a concierge and customized service with maybe a few distinguishing features here and there, like fresh-baked cookies. But for the most part, all the established travel guides, Forbes, Voters, Frommers, even Lonely Planet and Rough Guide, they sent people on the same trips. So everyone took the same trips and stayed in the same hotels. Eiffel Tower, check. Louvre, check. Pompidou, check. But then the internet took over, and companies like Kayak, Expedia, and Airbnb, they saw an opportunity and gave you access to hundreds, if not thousands, of flights, rooms, and cars from a single app. And then you'd combine that with TripAdvisor and Yelp, so you could use user reviews to weed through all the different options and perhaps discover something off the beaten path. But as more and more of these sites popped up, the travel industry became uber competitive, and it was increasingly difficult to stand out. But one travel company adopted the power of experiences early. They're called Afar, and they saw a hole in the market for people who wanted deeper, richer, more participatory experiences. So back in 2012, they jumped into this burgeoning field of experiential travel, and they invited users to participate and share their emotional experiences with other travel lovers. They even created wander lists, which are lists of highlights grouped together in various ways, like My Trip to Tokyo or Swimming Holes Worldwide. kind of like Spotify's shared playlists. They've created a thriving community of users sharing their unique travel experiences with each other, rather than just rating restaurants and hotels and attractions like traditional travel companies. That's led to an active and engaged community on social media where they regularly feature user stories on Instagram and Pinterest, which feed into their subscription magazine. So they jumped into the experience game early in an industry that's been slow to adapt. And you too can get ahead of your competition by engaging your students emotionally through peak emotional experiences. This is where you can use techniques like curiosity and surprise, story, multisensory language, and pattern interrupts to inspire them to get in action and stay in action. Because lecturing your students or teaching only to the head, it's not an effective online course strategy. You need to mix it up to keep your students fully engaged. We're now in the experience age, where experiences reign supreme, and there's no going back, especially since Gen Z and the generations to come aren't interested in collecting material things. They're interested in collecting experiences. Take Taylor Swift and the incredible phenomenon of her Eras tour. Taylor and her team understood the one critical thing about her largely Gen Z audience. They crave participating in social events, and they're willing to pay for them. So armed with that knowledge, Swift set out to create something her audience had never experienced before, and something they'd never ever forget, spending billions to make it happen. And the impact of the experience she created specifically for her fans has reverberated well beyond those concert walls and into every corner of the internet. Her fans love her even more for creating something special just for them, and they're willing to tell everyone they know about it. There are even articles being published about people traveling to see Swift on multiple stops on the tour and how they do it all over again in a heartbeat. Now the tour is being turned into a feature film that you better believe her massive raving fan base will buy tickets to. No AI-generated song using Taylor Swift's voice could achieve anything near this level of audience engagement. And it's not just big companies and major artists living in the experience age. It's also individual experts, entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, and course creators like you and me. People like my Experience Product Masterclass students, Davina and Galen Dietrich, who initially wanted to create and sell an info product to other dentists, until an email hit their inbox claiming that info products were a thing of the past and the future is an experience. Now, guess who that email was from? Yep, me. So Davina and Galen joined EPM. They created their first experiential course and turned it into an online course empire with 12 courses and counting. Davina has even been able to retire from practicing dentistry so she can focus on her family and other passions. That's the power of experiential courses to transform both your students' lives and yours. So my question for you is, how can you embed shared experiences, perceived customization, constant wins, and emotional experiences in your course so you can get your students into action so they achieve real, lasting results? Drop your ideas in the comments. I'd love to see them so I can better support you in creating your life-changing experience product. And if there's one thing you take away from this video, I hope it's this. Now is your time to create an experiential course, because the real threat to your business, it's not AI, it's information overload. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it so much. And be sure to share this if you found this helpful. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming tutorials. And if you want to keep watching, I've got a couple more videos you might like. ChatGPT can be awesome, but only if you know this first. How to get more students to complete your online course. Now go out there and live your message.